Hi everyone, welcome again to another theater review on the Hollywood Progressive. I'm Nia. I'm here with Dick and Sharon as well. This last weekend, to round out our theater weekend bonanza, we saw Crabs in a Bucket at the Echo Theater Company. Founded in 1996, the Echo Theater Company is a group of actors, writers, directors, and producers dedicated to developing and presenting the work of playwrights at all levels. July 15th, so this last weekend, was the world premiere of Crabs in the Bucket, which was written by Bernardo Cubria and directed by Alana Diaz. I apologize if I'm not saying that correctly. Set inside of a shucking bucket, Crabs in a Bucket takes a look at the curious phenomena experienced by many who attempt to better their situation and achieve their version of success and facing harsh ridicule from those around them within their community or within their circle. Observable with real crabs when placed into a bucket, any who make it near the top find themselves pulled back down by the crabs at the bottom or within the bucket, even though they're also seeking the exact same sort of freedom. Crabs may not be able to be aware of this phenomena or aware of the fact that if they just work together for 5 minutes, they could get out of the same situation that they're all in. However, we as humans should probably be able to see that a little bit better, and yet it happens. Sharon, could you tell us a little bit more about this crabs in a bucket, crabs in a basket phenomena?
Yeah, after we saw the play, we had lunch afterwards or early dinner, and we actually went to a crab restaurant.
That's good.
We did. And we were talking about the term crabs in a bucket and what it means. And so, in preparation for this, I did a little searching to try to look for the origins of the term. Because I can remember, as far back as I can remember, I remember hearing about crabs in a bucket, but turns out that description of human behavior is relatively new. And according to the internet, the term crabs in a bucket was first known to be used by a Filipino political and sociological writer as what he perceived as a deplorable post-colonial attitude permeating the Philippines. He called it a crabs in a bucket mentality, and this was during the late 1980s. So, Dick, you probably would remember. I know Nia actually wasn't even on the planet yet. In the late 1980s, do you remember in the Philippines, the Marcoses?
Sure. Fernando Marcos and his wife Amelia.
Yeah. And so I don't know if the sociologist was referring to people being jealous of the Fernando's Marcos and his wife, but his wife was famous so they were the leaders, but she was famous for having how many pairs of shoes?
Several thousand pairs of shoes.
Thousands.
Expensive designer shoes.
And so this person described the behavior of people who apparently were jealous of her as being crabs in a bucket. But basically what it means, it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor that describes the mentality and behavior of individuals belonging to or identifying with a particular community or culture who hold each other back from various opportunities. So I know that I'd heard it used in describing people that were climbers, were said to try to ward off the crabs in a bucket, people who were trying to hold them back. But I don't know, I think there was for me in watching the play, there were a couple of different messages that popped out at me. And one of those messages were, okay, these guys, these crabs are in a shuck bucket.
A shucking bucket.
A shucking bucket.
Where their scales are going to be shucked and they're going to be put on the board.
They're getting ready to be made some humans' meal, just like when we were sitting in that restaurant. Right. Those crabs came from a bucket. So while these crabs were so anxious to go on to the next level for most of them would be on somebody's dinner plate. And the message that sent to me was that we need to be really clear about what we define as success. What we think is moving on up. is it in fact moving on up? So that was one of the takeaway messages for me in watching that play.
So the screenwriter Bernardo Cubria is said to have got the idea for this play from working in Latino theater here in Los Angeles, and the sharp elbows and the jealousies that if any actor or actress or playwright got ahead, then everybody would badmouth them and revile them, and so the play was like a study in human dynamics, human personality, because there's four crabs, right? And one of them is dismal and morose and defeated, as people are sometimes. You know, somebody else said this was like a troupe of actors. Nobody can get ahead. And then a new person, you know, has a drive. A new crab has a drive. Well, I can succeed, and the other crabs do everything in their power to make that impossible. It's said, and I don't know that this is true, if you put one crab in a bucket, the crab will get out. But if you put two or three or four, they'll do just what happens in this play. There'll be all that dynamics of no, you can't do it. And anybody who ever got out, you said, well, I'm sure it was nearly as good as they thought it was. And so that was part of the real interesting thing, the dynamics, and I know that's true from workplaces. Sharon and I have worked for decades in companies, and and if you worked hard and got a promotion, well, that was good, and then that was bad, because then the people who you used to be at the same level, they're not too happy to report to you, which is why oftentimes if a company is big enough, they don't let you move up in your company, in your work group. In your department. If you become manager, you have to go manage a different group of people so that you don't have to compete with all the jealousy. So that was pretty. So in that sense, I mean, it was a telling study of people's dynamics that was told in a very clever way. But we couldn't figure out, well, why did they want to get out of the shucking bucket? What was the next step that was going to be any better? I mean, I don't know. I was trying to think, well, if the shucking bucket was on the dock and they got out, then they could go swim in the ocean. But I don't think that's what was up.
No, everything about their conversation suggested that they thought that the ocean, where they had come from, was a step down.
Yeah.
They were on their way to someplace better. But I think it speaks volumes that what we're talking about here is crabs. What the hell do they know?
But it's also kind of a comment on capitalism, because exactly that. So the crabs in the ocean working together, communicating in a commune kind of environment, helping each other and having lots of little crabs. That wasn't good enough for them.
No, in fact, that was put down because one of the female crabs, I think it was female, I don't really know what their mating habits are, was complaining to the other, aren't you glad that you're free from the drudgery of raising 100,000 kids?
yeah, 100,000 crabs. And so since they aspired to something better, well, they got something that they thought was better, and they were moving on up in the world, and it was the shucking bucket, which was the next step below the dinner table. and that's kind of, and that's how we're encouraged to work in our workplaces. You move up and you make more money, and you get to drive a better car, and you work your ass off, and you die of a heart attack at 43.
And never get to enjoy all of these things that you supposedly worked for.
Right.
The bigger house and the bigger car and a couple of cars and all this other stuff, the fancier clothes, and you don't really get to enjoy any of those things. So anyway.
Do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I was thinking about how, Dad, you mentioned all of the different characters, and Sharon, you mentioned the one that you resonated the most with, and I think the one that I resonated the most with was Beb, which was the newest crab to the bucket, who had worked her way apparently to get herself to the bucket because that's where the special crabs went, and she, gosh darn it, was going to be the most special crab. And in finding out about, they call it the climb, right? So there's some sort of alarm that goes off, and that's when the crabs try their best to try and get out, and it goes from calm conversation to all out war against each other.
Right.
And after the first time it happens, Beb is sort of blindsided and is absolutely confused, and is very flustered, upset, angry with the other crabs. And ultimately, she brings this younger, hopeful, fresh energy to the shucking bucket,
Right.
and eventually starts to ask the question of, well, why is it this way? Why do we have to do it this way? Why do we have to all fight each other to get to the same place where we're all trying to go? And yeah, I identified with that because that's, you find yourself growing up and you sort of, I guess inherit is the word. You inherit the systems around you, the systems that be in the world that we live in, the country that we live in. And sometimes you have to just stop and say, well, why? Why is it like this? I also, I got a kick out of this set. I thought they did a great job of making it kind of look like a bucket. And the crabs definitely looked like crabs. Just a really fun, unique play. I think we've seen some more serious things lately and more plays based on things that have actually happened or are based in our human reality as we know it. So this was a nice change for me to see crabs in a bucket, and it looked like crabs in a bucket. It was really clever, the things that they chose to do, and they had all sorts of different ways to walk around and really emulate crabs, which I was very entertaining to me. I don't know if you guys noticed anything about the production or the set that you guys really liked.
I agree. They are dressed up. They have crab uniforms or crab suits, along with the big crab claws, and it's very cool. So we've been to that theater before, Echo Theater Company, and they tend to do, I would call this a somewhat experimental or unusual play. But as Nia says, I mean, there was a lot of physical action, and especially when they fight to get up the ladder and in the strobe lights, and they're fighting each other, and there's a lot of humor to it. But underneath is this very serious observation on human behavior, and why does it have to be this way, and what are the consequences for having it this way?
Yeah, and how do we define success? And do we think success, why do we think that this thing that for many people leads them to work themselves to death, why do we think that that's success?
Is the only success.
Right. So the four young actors do a superb job of emulating crabs. You don't forget that they're people, but they do it's pretty clever the way they act out and kind of perform like crabs do. And I really like the fights they have on going up the stairs.
Yeah,
those were fun.
It was fun.
Yeah.
So once again, Crabs in a Bucket sort of examines the realities that we tell ourselves as we face and realize the situations that we're in, and comments on sometimes the subliminal jealousy that comes up when we see other people succeeding in their life versus our own. This play urges us not only to try and meet the successes of those within our circle or our community with joy, but to also challenge the system that makes it so that there are those that are struggling and those that are succeeding. The show premiered, like I said, this last weekend and runs through August 21st at the Echo Theater at Atwater Village in LA. This play is fun, witty, lots of crabs, lots of humor, and hopefully we'll have you leaving questioning the bucket that you may be in, who you're in it with, why you're in it in the first place, and if there isn't a way for you to all get out of it together. Thank you so much for watching. Can't wait to see you all again after our next play, which I believe is this Saturday. And we'll see you all then.
Ready?
Nice job being the ringleader, Mia. Thank you.
Thanks.